Hello students, welcome back to the next video of the add-on course Contemporary Practices in Management, the second module part B, that is the accounting and auditing. Students, in the previous video we have seen different types of audit on the basis of the organization structure, on the basis of the time of auditing, on the basis of scope of auditing, on the basis of objective of auditing, and also certain other types of auditing. And after studying all those different types of auditing, we have also got an idea on how the auditing has to be taking place in the organization. And there are two important forces for auditing, that is the internal control and internal check. So this fifth video of accounting and auditing comprises of the information about internal control and internal check. So first, let us see what an internal control is. So internal control is a system of controls or financial and otherwise established by the management. See, here it is completely talking about the measures, okay, any procedures, any measures that are implemented in the organization or exercised in the business enterprise for the effective working is called as internal control. In simple, if I have to say, internal control refers to the measures and the procedures followed by the business organization or business enterprise in order to have track on the financial and non-financial activities. So it is normally used to control the financial and non-financial activities, and it involves a different number of checks. That means keep checking the transactions or checking the activities in the organization, and controls exercised, which is nothing but the measures that will be taken by the management in the organization in order to have control over the activities. Here controls are nothing but the procedures or measures. Okay, so that is why it is referred to the whole system of controls, financial and otherwise established by the management in conduct of business, including internal check and internal audit and other forms of control. So with this meaning of internal control, we understand that the two measures that we are talking about in the internal control is internal check and internal audit. So internal audit, you all have come across many times in the previous videos. It is an audit or verification of books of accounts that is being done by an internal of the organization, internal employee of an organization, who is appointed for the purpose of auditing the books of accounts. But internal check might be the new word for you all. Internal check is process of segregation of duties in such a way that the work which is done by one person is automatically checked by another person. So that's the exact meaning of internal check. So internal control is the one wherein we exercise these two different procedures or measures in order to have control over the activities happening in the business enterprise. So let us see the objectives of internal control. So the objectives of internal control can be studied under the point of view of the clients, that is the business enterprise, and also in the point of view of auditors. So in the point of view of clients, internal control system always provides authentic and reliable data which is useful to take business decisions. Here what happens, internal control comprises of internal check and internal audit, wherein the books of accounts or all the transactions are checked in on a very regular basis or frequently. So what happens, the data becomes reliable and authentic, and it safeguards the physical and non-physical assets in the form of records, documentations, etc. So you will be able to protect the assets of the organization or the business enterprise with the help of the internal control measures that we take. And internal control promotes the operational efficiency because it prevents the waste and duplication of work and inefficient use of resources, because we have one particular set of people working towards the internal audit and internal check. So there will be no duplication of work, because as and when the transaction occurs, as and when it is recorded in the books of accounts, at the same time it will be verified also. And a good system of internal control provides that the company follows the procedures and rules required by law. So any rules and procedures that are required by law will be followed under the internal control measures. This is from the point view of the clients. But in the point view of auditors, internal control actually helps the uh, external auditor in order to do the verification easily, because on routine basis the verification is already being done. So the work of an external audit can be less. Okay, because he evaluates a system of control before commencing an audit work, and his work becomes easier if the control system is efficient. If the system is good, then he need not much worry about any frauds and errors occurring. It will be easy for him to detect, because already the checking is being done in the back end. Then let us all see what are the important principles of good internal control system. These principles can also be termed as the characteristics of good internal control system, features of good internal control system, or elements of good internal control system. So these elements comprises of the competent and trustworthy staff. That means people who are in charge of internal control system must be reliable and highly competent about the work, and any lack of knowledge and dishonesty will spoil the efficiency of the system. So this must be the first and foremost principle of any good internal control system. And the next principle is records of financial and other organizational plans. That means a good internal control system must have a good documentation system. The filing, recording, classifying, all these will help in this particular documentation. So it is important for business organization to maintain proper documentation system. Then segregation of duties. I told you earlier that one of the types of internal control is internal check, wherein the segregation of duty will be done in such a way that the work which is done by one person is automatically done by another person. Normally there should be a separate department for internal control, and this reduces the frauds. And normally a clerk who is in charge of accounting function should not be given in charge of any assets also. That means when duty is segregated, if one person is giving in charge of collecting the cash, then the deposit of that particular amount to bank should be given to some other person. It should not be the responsibility of the person who is receiving the cash. So what happens, the work which is done by one person will be automatically checked by an other person. Then the next principle is supervision. So supervision means properly reviewing the operations of the company, which makes the control system very effective. And the next principle is authorization. So authorization means all the transactions must be properly authorized. That means that the authority of each person should be well defined. Any transaction that is being happened, the accountant has to check the signature, seal part of it, the name of the company part of it, and then record it in books of accounts. Then in the internal control system, one particular person should be verifying whether the seal is original, whether the signature is not forged, or whether it is forged, all that. Okay, so authorization is a main principle of good internal control system. Then sound practices. Sound means efficient. Okay. So here the company should have well established procedures, policies, delegations, and organizational manuals, so that the internal control system works effectively and the results that we get are fruitful. Then internal audit is also one of the types of internal control along with internal check, wherein the verification of books of accounts will happen by an internal employee who is assigned that particular job of verifying the books of accounts, and he will be paid certain amount of salary also, and it's a part of internal control, and it should be independent of internal check also. Then the next principle of good internal control system is accounting controls. That means a proper accounting information system should be established so that the information relating to accounts is properly collected, recorded, and then the accounts are being prepared. So these are the important principles of good internal control system, which helps the external auditor in verification of books of accounts also. And the next one is areas of internal control. That means where the auditor has to mainly focus, wherein the management, the business organization should focus more on internal control. See, internal control is more needed where the activities are prone to risk. Okay, for example, if anything that goes wrong with the stores department, if there are certain raw materials stored in the stores department and some of the materials are missing, that means there is fraud happening in the organization, wherein the goods are being taken from the stores department and sold for the profit by any individual. So there are chances, I'm not telling that this will happen, but the chances of this happening is always there with the organization. So in such areas, the internal control system should be effectively working. So generally the areas of internal control are, first is the general financial control. That means it's concerned with control over all financial functions like planning, acquiring, investing funds, and management of profits. And this deals with accounting, supervision, recording, and that of the finance department. Everything will be recorded. So this is one of the areas where internal control system is very much required. And then cash control, I just said in the previous slide that the person who is responsible for collecting the cash, or the cashier, should not be given any responsibility of depositing it into bank, because there are chances that the amount may be misused by that particular cashier. If we have one other particular person to oversee the work or job of a cashier, then that particular person will do it effectively. So wherever the cash is involved, the internal control system should be very much tight, because it is concerned with the proper control over receipts, payments, and balance of the cash. So the control system must ensure that misappropriation of cash is prevented. That is why this is one of the most important areas of internal control system. Then control over wages means maintenance of proper time records. That means, see, we all pay wages to people based on the time that they spend in the organization, based on the work they do in the organization. Now, how do we measure the time that they have spent in the organization and the work that is being done? So it is not possible for one person to oversee all these things. So we will have one particular person designated for the same purpose, that his job itself is to oversee how many hours the workers are working in the organization, and how many pieces of work they are doing on day-to-day basis. What are the other considerations that we will have to consider for payment of wages, all that. Okay, so here In this particular regard, payment to wages for the work should not be done, and the misappropriation of cash should not happen. That means any wage payment that we make should not be done without proper internal control system. Okay, that is what I meant. Then control over purchases. So as I said, material handling, when we purchase the material, see, every organization will have its own departments. Though the purchase department is the one that is placing order for purchase, when the materials are received, it is stored in the stores department. So there are chances that the person or a storekeeper or the person who's in charge of the store misuse the goods. Okay, so somewhere where the goods and cash are handled by man, the internal control system must be tight enough. So the system of internal control regarding purchases should also be developed in such a manner that purchasing, accounting, handling and issuing of goods are properly controlled. So these are the different areas of internal control. Then let us all see different types of internal control system. And before seeing the types of internal control system, let us all understand how the evaluation of internal control system will happen. Okay, so first and foremost thing, the evaluation will happen by determining the prevailing control mechanism in the organization. That means the auditor should inquire about the accounting system of the enterprise. Then only he has to start with his auditing work. Then he has to close the examination of transactions. That means after determining the control mechanism in the organization, that means getting to know about the information, how and in what way the accounts are being maintained. The next step is he has to close the examination of the transactions. That means he has to check all the transactions and make sure that they are all recorded properly. Then he has to evaluate. That means he has to gather the exact information, and internal control questionnaire or a flow chart has to be prepared, and the evaluation of the system should happen in detail by the auditor. Then the confirmation of evaluation should have, where see, at this particular stage the auditor will be in position to point out the strong and weak points of the internal control system. So he has to confirm whether the mechanism that the company is using is proper or not, and then he has to recommend certain points for improvements. Certain insights should be given for the incorporation, and the business enterprise should consider them all for the improvement also. So after finding out the merits and demerits of the internal control system, the auditor should inform the management if it is effective, and if it is not effective, then the suggestions should be recommended, and for the improvement it has to be considered by the company or the business enterprise also. Lastly, the follow up should happen, wherein the auditor should check whether his recommendations are being implemented by the subsequent review of the system or not. Okay, like this the evaluation will happen, wherein first the auditor will check what type of system is the organization following. Then close examination of the transactions will happen. Immediately after that he will do an evaluation, and then confirm the evaluation and give the recommendations, and then he will do a follow up whether his suggestions are being considered or not. So now talking about the different types of internal control, we are very well able to see here on the screen that there are three different types of internal control. One is detective internal control, preventive internal control is preventive is the second one, and the third one is corrective internal control. So detective means finding out where the system is going wrong. Preventive internal control means avoiding the occurrence of any such unwanted activities in the organization. Corrective is the one wherein any errors that has already happened has to get corrected. Maybe if there is any particular entry being made as sales, but actually it is a purchases, but the amount is same, so this is an error that has occurred. So corrective internal control means the system wherein this will be considered, and you make the correction. Instead of mentioning it as sales, you take it in the instead of mentioning it in the sales, if you have taken it in the purchases book, now you can very well correct it by taking it in the purchases book and removing it from the sales book. So these are the three main types of internal control. So detective controls are designed to find the errors and irregularities after they have occurred. And the two examples of detective controls are, first one is the review of performances, and the other one is reconciliation. So in the review of performance, what happens? Management compares the information about current performance to budgets, forecasts, prior periods, or other benchmarks to measure the extent to which goals and objectives are being achieved, and to identify the unusual conditions and require a follow up. Then reconciliation is where an employee relates different sets of data to one another and identifies and investigates differences and takes corrective actions when necessary. So these are the two examples of detective internal control. Then talking about the preventive internal control, this is designed to discourage the errors and irregularities from occurring. That means you prevent them from occurring, and they are proactive controls that help to ensure departmental objectives are being met. So here you will be able to see three different preventive internal control measures. One is the segregation of duties, wherein the duties are segregated among different people to reduce the risk of error or inappropriate action. Normally what happens, the responsibilities for authorizing transactions, that is the approval part of it, recording transaction, wherein accounting part of it, and handling related asset, that is the custody, are divided. That means approval will be given to one person, accounting is given to one person. That means the person who becomes accountable is given to different person, and the custody of that particular activity will be given to another person. So what happens here is the risk of each and every person is reduced, and the risk of error also gets reduced. And then the next preventive internal control is approvals, authorizations, and verifications, wherein the management authorizes employees to perform certain activities and to execute certain transactions within limited parameters. So in addition, here what happens is management specifies those activities or transactions that need supervisory approval before they are performed or executed by employees. And a supervisor's approval implies that he or she has verified and validated that the activity or the transaction conforms to establish policies and the procedures in the organization. So approvals, authorizations, and verifications, all these go in hand together, but approval has to be handled by a different person, authorization has to be given to a different person, the verification will be done by a different person. So these are the different procedures that they follow. So internal control with respect to approval, with respect to authorization, with respect to verification has to be followed in an organization. And the next one is security of assets. So this can be preventive and detective also, wherein the access to equipment, inventories, securities, any cash and other assets is restricted, because these assets are periodically counted and compared to the amounts that is shown on the control records. So every time this has to happen. Then talking about the corrective internal controls, these are developed as remedy errors that can be systematically corrected, and at time this may also involve additional training or employee disciplinary action. And following discovery of major fraud, corrective controls are developed to counter the particular scheme employed by the proprietor. So corrective controls are those which are developed to remedy errors. That means errors occur and we correct them. Okay, so this is about the different types of internal control. So with all these types of internal control, we have understood how important and beneficial this internal control system for an organization is, but it also involves the expenditure which may not be affordable, which is again a drawback or a disadvantage or a limitation, I must say. Then it is concerned with the routine transactions many times, and unusual transactions may be overlooked. See, what happens here, we say in general that many cooks spoil the dish. So here also, for one particular work, we have different people, because we are segregating the duties in such a way that the work of one person is checked by another person. So what happens, instead of having one particular person to do the work, we need to have two people for the same work. Okay, so such limitations are also there, but it is always beneficial for us to keep a good internal control system in our organization. Then let's move on to the next topic under the internal control, that is the internal check. As I said, internal check is a process of segregation of duties or work allotment or work allocated amongst the various members of the staff in such a way that the work done by one person is automatically checked by another person. Now here, according to L.R. Dixie, he says that internal check is an arrangement of bookkeeping routine wherein errors and frauds are likely to be prevented or discovered by the very occupation of bookkeeping itself. So here are certain objectives of internal control, wherein internal check. First one is to eliminate frauds and errors, then to prevent the misappropriation of goods and cash. So this is prevented by allocating the work in such a way that work of one person is checked by another person. Then to exercise moral pressure over staff members. So here what happens, the risk of misappropriation is also reduced, and also the pressure on each and every staff is also reduced, because he is given one particular task, not all the tasks are maintained by him. And the other objective of internal check is to make accounting system more reliable. So you can rely on the results of this internal check report. And to encourage specialization of labor. Specialization of labor means the see, it is very important that when we go in search of job also, we prefer work which symbolizes or which involves much of work, where our specialization is considered. If I belong to any finance specialization, I would like to work in the finance department as an employee. If I am put under the HR, then I don't know whether I will be able to give my 100%. So specialization has to be considered, and in order to reduce the time spent on a particular work. So what happens when you have all the works being done and at once, if all the works are to be verified, it will become very difficult. So when the duty is segregated properly, the work will be automatically checked by another person. So there is no need of doing a follow up whether the person has done it or not, because the work of that particular person itself is to check the work of another person. Okay, so these are the objectives of internal check. Now let us all study certain principles or points to be considered in framing a good internal check. So it is important that we note down that there is no single employee should have independent control over any important aspect of business. That means, for example, if cash receipt is an important aspect of business, then there should be not only one person who is handling it, there should be many people who check on the other person who is receiving the money and paying the money also. The duties of employees should be changed from time to time. So here what happens, if that particular person is fixed in that particular job itself, or duty itself, what happens, the monotony occurs, and then the person might also get indulged in any fraud thing. So it is necessary that we don't give them that time of thinking like a fraudster. Then employees who control physical assets should not have access to accounts. Yeah, this is what I told. See, if I am handling the operational machine in the organization, in the factory, then I should not be having any control over the accounts, because there are high chances that I manipulate it, though the assets condition is not good, or though the condition is bad, I may not show it in the accounts because I don't want it to be projected in that way. So the control of physical assets who to is given to whomever, they should not be given access to accounts. And it's better to follow a system of self balancing ledger, and then account must be periodically verified, and the allocation of work must be carefully done, and position must be reviewed periodically. So every now and then there should be a frequent check happening on the work that is being done. And while stock taking, the pricing and the evaluation of stock should be done by the people who are not connected to the stores department. As I told, though the purchase department is the one that is placing an order for purchase of materials, it will be stored in the stores department only. Okay, so the pricing of the stock and evaluation of the stock has to be done by someone who is not connected to the stores department. That means maybe the purchase department has to do it and keep it with the stores department, so that people in the stores department are aware that not only they have the information about the material in the stores, it is also the purchase department. So there are no frauds and errors occurring by any chance. And the cashier should not be given in charge of maintaining accounts and bank transaction. This is what I told earlier. If there is a cashier in the organization who is given in charge of collecting the cash and making the payment, he or she should not be given the work of depositing it into bank, because there are high chances of misappropriating the cash. So he or she should not be given in charge of maintaining the accounts and bank transactions. Then there are certain advantages of internal check also. Before we connect to how auditor is associated with the internal check, and how internal check is going to help the auditor, let us see what are the advantages of internal check. So there is proper allocation of work and easy detection and minimization of errors and frauds. And the efficiency of internal control system and internal check system is increased with whatever the measures that we take. Then quick preparation of final accounts is possible with the help of internal check, and it is convenience to the auditor also. He need not specifically get into verifying each and every transaction, as it is all done on routine basis generally. Then increase in profit and development of the business is possible, though we have a large number of employees for single work. The profit will be increased because of the efficiency that internal check system is giving to us, and the time that it is saving for all of us. Then it helps in making the accounting system reliable. Then apart from that, see, if there is any carelessness on the part of audit, then internal check will be considered as inefficient, and it is sometimes risky for an auditor, because if the auditor does not apply any tests and procedures for his own, and if he relies on the output of the system, his work cannot be free from irregularities. So it is important that internal check, it is important that we also know that internal check also involves certain risk, because collusion among the employees might happen, because some might not like the other persons who are equally qualified, having a check on the same work that they are doing. Okay, so this is about the internal check basically. So now let us see internal check and the auditor, how they both are connected to each other. So see, efficient internal check system reduces the work of an auditor, but it will not reduce the responsibility of an auditor. If in the process of examination of accounts, if he finds any weakness in the system, he should report it to the client, but The existence of the good internal check system will help the auditor to a great extent, but there is no reduction in the legal liability. If any fraud is discovered subsequently, he may be held quietly of a negligence, because he is the one who is supposed to verify whether it is true or not. Then even after his report being presented, then if the management finds that there is a part of negligence by the auditor, then he cannot defend himself, saying that he relied upon the efficient internal check system that existed in the business. So he cannot do that. He cannot say that I completely relied on the internal check. Though internal check is happened, he has to do his job of verifying the books of accounts. So now let us all see how the internal check happens in an organization. Firstly, talking about internal check regarding the sales. Okay, so sales might happen at the counter, or it might happen by the traveling agents, or sales might happen as postal sales also, that is at counter. Then it can happen by traveling salesman, or it can also be a postal sales. So on the over the counter, see, every time when the internal check is happening, it is important that there is certain the important that the procedure is being followed in the internal control system. So when we talk about the sales over the counter, each counter should have separate salesmen, and each salesman should be given separate sales memo book. And usually different color is used for different counters, that is better. So sales memo should be prepared by salesmen in 4 copies, wherein one copy will be retained by the clerk, and the other three will be given to the customer. Then payment is made at the cash counter. So there one copy of cash memo is returned by the internally that is the internal person who duly stamps as cash paid, and 2 copies will be returned. Then the cashier records the total sales in the cash sales register. Now every salesman should prepare total sales summary of the respective counters. Then at the end of the day, the total sales are recorded by the salesman. Total cash received and total sales as per the register must agree with each other. So at counter, what happens if there are multiple counters, each counter should have different people, and 4 cash memos should be issued. Then if it is postal sales, so postal sales means a separate register should be maintained to record details of postal sales, and cash may be received either with order or at the time of delivery, but proper records will be made in this regard for cash received and due. So usually goods are sent by value payable post. So the sales register must be checked in detail by a senior officer. And in case of sales by traveling agents, traveling salesmen should not be allowed to issue any final receipts to the customers, because any amount received must be remitted to the head office account on daily basis. Whatever the amount he receives, he has to remit it to head office account on that day itself. Because generally for traveling agents, the commission is paid based on the sales they make. If the amount that they receive is 2 lakh in a day, then based on that a certain percentage will be paid to them as salary or commission. So salesmen should not be allowed to deduct their expenses or commission from the sale proceeds. Though he is spending some money in the travel, the amount cannot be deducted by the salesman himself. He has to send it to the HO, that is the head office. Then from there the amount has to be released, and periodically sales report has to be submitted by the traveling agent. That is about the internal check regarding sales. Then internal check regarding payment of wages. So regarding payment of wages, it is important that we understand the chances of frauds are also high in this particular regard, because a good system of internal internal check always assumes significance, because payment of wages to dummy workers, then that means, see, sometimes what happens, I may take money from the organization and put it into my pocket, and I show it as wages being paid to some worker. Okay, so there are high chances of manipulating the books of accounts also here. So it is very important that we maintain proper internal check system. So here, first thing is maintaining proper time record. If the wages are being paid according to the time being spent by the employee, proper time has to be recorded. Then the wage sheet has to be prepared. Then after preparing the wage sheet, the wages should be paid to the respective employees. So in the absence of any employee, see, in the preparation of wage sheet also, there should be five clerks. So two clerks should examine the time and price, wages, overtime records, all that. Then another clerk should be in charge of preparing the wage sheet, and the fourth clerk should be given in charge of calculating the amount of deductions and all that, and the fifth clerk checks the whole work thoroughly. So mainly there are four, and the fifth one is to just oversee whether the work is being done properly or not, and then the payment of wages should happen. Then internal check regarding purchases. So regarding purchases, at the time of purchase of materials, at the time of storage of materials, at the time of issue of materials, internal check system should be properly happening. At the time of purchase, as I said, though it is the purchase department which is placing an order and purchasing, the materials will not be received by the purchase department, it will be received at the stores department. So storage of goods are to be considered there, and there again an internal check system should happen, wherein a storekeeper should every now and then record what is the material that he is receiving from the vendors or from the suppliers, and what is the what are the number of materials he is sending to the production department for the production. Okay, so this has to be checked. Then internal check regarding departmental stores. So departmental store is a large scale retail organization working on self service basis, selling the daily requirements of the customers. Now these are centrally located and attract customers. So here we check on the operation of department stores. Okay, wherein the name itself suggests a department store divided into small departments offering a specific product line. Now these departments are headed by supervisors assisted by the stock assistants. So operations in this department stores are based on self service. The cash is paid by the customer at the counter. So in the departmental store also the proper check has to happen. Then internal check with regards to cash receipts. So as I said, cash has to be received by one person, it has to be verified by one person, it has to be deposited into bank by another person. So like this internal check system has to be followed by an organization. So this is about the internal check. So apart from internal check, it is important that you also know about the internal audit. So we have already discussed about internal audit in the previous videos many times. So probably I will also be posting a video on internal audit for your reference as a reference video. But please be informed that the internal audit is or the verification of books of accounts that happens with the help of the internal employee who is working as an auditor of that particular organization within the organization. He is not an external organization or any a person who takes in charge of verifying the books of accounts every now and then can be considered as an internal auditor. So with this we have come to an end of internal control and internal check. So in the next video we will be seeing what are the recent trends that we see in the field of auditing. See you in the next video. Take care. So please take care. In the next video we will see you. Bye.